Somebody please help me. I can't find my son. Please help me.
She was just trying to save her son. That's all. A mother's instinct. A mother's love. But in Seoul, in the world of the ultra-rich, even love can be used as a weapon. Celeste didn't know she was walking into a trap. She didn't know that the phone call from her son was fake. She didn't know that the men waiting for her in that alley weren't there to help. She only knew one thing. Her son was in danger, and she would do anything to protect him. By the time she realized the truth, it was too late. The police were already there. The cameras were already rolling. And the Jang family, the most powerful criminals in Seoul, had exactly what they wanted. A hostage. A scapegoat. A mother who would do anything for her children. Now, you're probably wondering how we got here. How a chef from Queens ended up in the middle of a billionaire's war. How a simple cooking competition became a battle for survival. And how one woman's love for her family brought down an empire. Let me start from the beginning. Before I continue, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love knowing where these stories end up. New York, London, Seoul, Cape Town, Tokyo. Let me know. Alright, let me tell you about Liya. Liya was a chef from Queens, New York. She had grown up in a small apartment above her mother's soul food restaurant, learning to cook before she could even reach the stove. Food wasn't just her passion, it was her heritage. It was the way her family showed love. She had moved to Seoul 5 years ago, chasing a dream. She wanted to fuse her mother's southern cooking with Korean flavors. It was an unlikely combination, but Liya had a gift. She could taste a dish once and recreate it perfectly. She could look at ingredients and know exactly what they needed. Within 3 years, she had become the head chef at one of Seoul's most prestigious fusion restaurants. She was respected. She was admired. She was making a name for herself. But she was also lonely. She worked 16-hour days. She had no time for dating, no time for friends. Her only social life was the occasional video call with her mother back in Queens. And then she met Ryu. Ryu was a billionaire. But unlike most billionaires, he hadn't inherited his fortune. He had built it from nothing. He grew up in a tiny apartment in Busan, the son of a fisherman and a seamstress. His father died when he was 12. His mother worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. Ryu had seen poverty up close, the kind that steals your childhood and forces you to grow up fast. He started his first business at 19, a small import-export company. Within 10 years, he had built an empire. Shipping, real estate, technology. He was worth billions. But he never forgot where he came from. He never forgot the hunger. He never forgot the desperation. That's why, when he walked into Liya's restaurant and tasted her fusion cuisine, something clicked. He recognized the soul in her cooking. The love, the struggle, the determination. He asked to meet her. He wanted to tell her in person that her food was the best he'd ever tasted. She came out to his private dining room, nervous and expecting another arrogant rich man who wanted to complain. Instead, he stood up, bowed and said, "Chef Liya, your food made me feel something I haven't felt in a long time." She blinked. "What's that?" He smiled, a warm, genuine smile. "Home." After that night, Ryu came back to the restaurant every week. He brought her ingredients from his travels. He asked about her mother. He asked about Queens. He wasn't like the other rich men she had met. He didn't try to impress her with his money. He didn't talk about his cars or his properties or his business deals. He talked about his mother. About the nights she would come home exhausted but still find the energy to make him dinner. About the way she would hum while she cooked. Liya understood. She had watched her own mother do the same thing. They fell in love slowly, quietly. It wasn't a grand romance. It was 2 people who recognized each other's wounds and decided to heal them together. 6 months into their relationship, Ryu asked her to move in with him. "I know it's fast," he said, "but I've never met anyone like you. I don't want to waste another day." She said yes, and that's when the Jang family noticed. Jang Taywan was a rival of Ryu's. He was a construction magnate who had built his empire through bribery, intimidation, and murder. He had tried to destroy Ryu's company multiple times, stealing contracts, bribing officials, spreading lies. But Ryu was untouchable. He had built his reputation on integrity. He didn't take bribes. He didn't cut corners. He didn't bow to anyone. Taywan hated him for it. And when Taywan discovered that Ryu had fallen in love with a black American chef from Queens, he saw an opportunity. He called his daughter, Jang Soa, into his office. "Do you see this?" he said, pointing at the photos of Ryu and Liya. "Our enemy has a weakness. A chef. A foreigner. An outsider. She's his Achilles heel." Soa smirked. "What do you want me to do?" "Find out everything about her. Her mother. Her brother. Her past. Everyone she loves. And then we'll use them." Soa nodded slowly. "And when we break her, we break him." 3 weeks later, Celeste received a phone call. She was in her small apartment in Queens, watching TV, when her phone buzzed. The caller ID showed her son Steven's name. She answered immediately. "Steven, baby, is everything okay?" But it wasn't Steven. A cold voice spoke on the other end. "Mrs. Celeste, your son is in danger. He's been kidnapped. We will hurt him unless you do exactly what we say." Celeste's blood ran cold. "Who is this? Where's my son?" "Don't worry about that. Just listen. We need you to come to Seoul. We have a job for you. If you cooperate, your son will be released." "But I don't understand. How do I know he's even?" The line went silent. Then she heard Steven's voice. He sounded terrified. Mom, please don't. They have." Then the line went dead. Celeste was shaking. She called her son's phone again. It went straight to voicemail. She was terrified. She didn't know what to do. But she knew one thing. She would do anything to save her son. She booked a flight to Seoul that night. The moment Celeste landed in Seoul, she followed the instructions. She took a taxi to a dark alley in Gangnam. She was told to wait. She was told to cooperate. She didn't know that the men waiting for her weren't kidnappers. They were actors, hired by Soa, paid to make it look like Celeste was involved in something illegal. The moment Celeste arrived, the men swarmed her. They grabbed her arms. They forced a phone into her hand. They pushed her against a wall. And then police sirens. Dozens of officers rushed into the alley. They surrounded Celeste. They arrested her. She was screaming, crying, trying to explain. My son is in danger. Please, you have to help him." But the police didn't listen. They had been tipped off by Soa's contacts. They had evidence, fake evidence, that Celeste was involved in a kidnapping plot. The phone in her hand had texts from Steven asking for ransom money. The photos on her phone showed her meeting with criminals. It was all a setup. Celeste was taken to jail. She was charged with kidnapping conspiracy. She faced 20 years in prison. Liya found out about her mother's arrest through a news alert. American woman arrested in Seoul, kidnapping conspiracy. She read the article in disbelief. Her mother? Kidnapping? It was insane. It was impossible. Her mother was the kindest, gentlest woman she knew. She called Ryu immediately. She was sobbing so hard she could barely speak. "Ryu, it's my mother. She's been arrested. They're saying she was involved in a kidnapping. But it's a lie. It has to be a lie. She would never." Ryu held her tight. I know she didn't do this. This is Taywan. This is his work." Liya looked up at him, her eyes wild. "What do you mean? What does Taywan have to do with this?" Ryu's face was cold. His eyes were filled with a quiet fury she had never seen before. "He wants to break me. And he's using you to do it. He's using your family." Liya's face went pale. "My brother. Where's Steven?" She called Steven's phone. No answer. She called again. Nothing. Her brother was missing. Ryu went into full protective mode. He called Detective Park, a police officer he had known for years. Someone he trusted. Someone who wasn't on Taywan's payroll. Taywan has Liya's brother. He set up her mother. He's trying to destroy her, so he can destroy me. "I need your help." Detective Park nodded. "What do you need?" "I need to know where Steven is. And I need to make sure he stays safe." Detective Park pulled up his laptop. He started searching through police databases, security footage, anything he could access. Within an hour, he found it. Steven was being held in a warehouse on the outskirts of Seoul. Taywan's men were guarding him. He was alive, but terrified. Ryu looked at Liya. "I'm going to get your brother back. And I'm going to expose Taywan. But I need you to trust me." She nodded, even though she was terrified. "What's your plan?" Ryu's plan was risky. He would stage a rescue operation. But it wouldn't be a real rescue. It would be a trap. He had Detective Park authorize a secret police operation. Ryu's security team would storm the warehouse, kidnap Steven, and bring him to a safe location. Then Detective Park would discover evidence that Taywan and Soa were behind everything. It was a controlled kidnapping, a legal sting operation, and it had to look real. That night, Ryu's men stormed the warehouse. They took out Taywan's guards with military precision. Steven was terrified. He didn't know who was rescuing him and who was hurting him. One of Ryu's men grabbed Steven and said, "We're here to help you. Stay calm. Don't resist." Steven was brought to a safe house. He was given food, water, and a phone. The first person he called was his mother. But Celeste was still in jail. She didn't know if her son was alive. She didn't know anything. While her family was in danger, Liya had to focus on the cooking competition. It was the most prestigious culinary competition in Seoul. She had been preparing for it for months. It was her chance to prove herself, not just as a chef, but as a woman who had built a life in a foreign country. But now, with her mother in jail and her brother in hiding, she couldn't concentrate. She called Ryu. "I can't do this, Ryu. I can't stand on that stage knowing my mother is in prison and my brother is being hunted." He held her hands. "Listen to me. You can do this. Not in spite of what's happening, because of it. Your mother would want you to succeed. She would want you to fight. And when you win, you'll have the platform to tell the world the truth." She looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. "What if I fail?" "You won't. You're a chef from Queens. Failure isn't in your blood." She took a deep breath. She walked onto the competition stage. She cooked. She poured her heart into every dish. She remembered her mother's soul food. She remembered her grandmother's recipes. She fused them with Korean flavors. She created something new, something beautiful. And she won. The crowd erupted in applause. The judges praised her. She was the champion. But as she accepted her trophy, she looked at the cameras and said, "I'm not just here to win a competition. I'm here to clear my mother's name. She's innocent, and I'm going to prove it." The day of Celeste's trial arrived. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, spectators, and the Jang family, Taywan and Soa sitting smugly in the front row. The prosecution presented their case. They played recordings of the ransom calls. They showed photos of Celeste meeting with criminals. They painted her as a desperate, greedy woman willing to kidnap for money. Celeste looked defeated. She was an old woman, far from home, accused of a crime she didn't commit. Then Ryu stood up. He had arranged for Detective Park to be there. He had arranged for a dossier of evidence to be presented to the judge. "Your Honor," Detective Park said, "I have evidence that this was a frame-up orchestrated by Jang Taywan and his daughter, Jang Soa. They kidnapped Steven Park, forced his mother to come to Seoul, and staged a fake crime scene to incriminate her." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Taywan stood up, his face red. "This is absurd. This is slander." Detective Park pulled out a USB drive. "Your Honor, I have video footage from the alley where Celeste was arrested. I have testimony from the hired men who were paid to stage the kidnapping. And I have text messages between Jang Soa and the men, proving she orchestrated everything." The judge looked at the evidence. He was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Taywan and Soa. "You are both under arrest." The trial was swift after that. Taywan and Soa were charged with kidnapping, conspiracy, and perjury. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Text messages, phone records, witness testimony. The judge looked at them coldly. "You used a mother's love as a weapon. You terrorized a family. You manipulated the justice system. And you showed no remorse." He paused. "Jang Taywan, Jang Soa, you are sentenced to 20 years in prison for kidnapping and conspiracy." Taywan screamed. Soa cried. They were dragged out of the courtroom. Celeste was finally free. She ran to her daughter and hugged her tightly. "My baby, my brave, brave baby. I thought I would never see you again." Liya was crying. "You're free, Mom. You're finally free." After the trial, Ryu helped Liya rebuild her family. He gave Steven a secure job at his company. Steven had always been aimless, unsure of his future. Ryu saw potential in him and gave him a chance. He provided Celeste with a safe home in Seoul, a beautiful apartment with a view of the Han River. She could stay as long as she wanted. She could visit her daughter whenever she liked. Celeste was hesitant at first. She had lived in Queens her entire life. But she looked at her daughter, her brave, determined daughter, and saw how happy Liya was. She decided to stay. "I spent my whole life struggling," she told Liya. "Maybe it's time I stop struggling. Maybe it's time I let myself be happy." 6 months later, Ryu and Liya were married. The wedding was held in Seoul during the spring, when the cherry blossoms were in full bloom. It was a small, intimate ceremony, just family and close friends. Liya wore a stunning white gown. She had a crown of cherry blossoms in her hair. She looked like a queen. Ryu wore a traditional Korean wedding suit. He had never been more handsome. Celeste was in the front row, crying tears of joy. Stephen was standing proudly as his sister's best man. Hannah, Liya's best friend, was the maid of honor. As Liya walked down the aisle toward Ryu, she thought about everything they had been through. The competition, the kidnapping, the trial, the victory. She thought about the woman who had been told she didn't belong. The chef who was told her food was too foreign. The woman who was told she would never find love. And now here she was, surrounded by family, surrounded by love, ready to start the rest of her life with the man who had seen her worth from the very beginning. Ryu took her hands. "Liya, from the moment I tasted your food, I knew you were extraordinary. But I didn't know how extraordinary until I watched you fight for your family. Until I watched you refuse to give up. Until I watched you prove to everyone, including yourself, that you were always enough." He smiled. "You are my home. You will always be my home." She was crying now. "Ryu, I came to Seoul looking for a career. I found so much more. I found you. I found a family. I found a place where I truly belong." She paused, looking at the crowd. Her mother, her brother, her friends. "I never expected to fall in love with a billionaire. But I did. And I never expected to find a home in a country so different from my own. But I did." She squeezed his hands. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for believing in me. And thank you for making my family whole again." The officiant spoke. "Kang Ryu, Liya Monroe, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Ryu kissed her under the cherry blossoms. And that's where we leave them. The chef from Queens who built a life in Seoul. The billionaire who never forgot where he came from. And the family that refused to be broken. Liya's restaurant became one of the most famous in Seoul. She wrote a cookbook dedicated to her mother. She even opened a small soul food restaurant in Itaewon. Her mother's recipes, her mother's love, shared with a whole new generation. Ryu's empire continued to grow. But he never lost sight of what mattered most. His family, his wife, his home. Celeste stayed in Seoul. She became a grandmother to Liya's children, 2 beautiful little ones who called her grandma and begged her to teach them how to cook. Stephen became a successful businessman. He never forgot the kindness that Ryu had shown him. He made sure to pay it forward. And Taywan and Soa, they rotted in their prison cells, powerless for the first time in their lives. The Jang family was destroyed, but Liya's family was reborn. Now let me ask you something. Do you think Liya was right to trust Ryu so completely? Or should she have been more cautious, considering his dangerous world? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and I'll pin the best one at the top. Here's the thing about this story. It's not just about revenge. It's about family. It's about sacrifice. It's about finding your place in a world that tells you you don't belong. If you enjoyed this story, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another wild tale. And shout out to everyone watching from wherever you are. Drop your city in the comments. Let's see where this story traveled. See you in the next one. Peace.